can start. So everyone, thank you for joining this webinar. We have an interesting speaker. His name is Mr. Michele Burigo. Michele is a customer experience and insight leader who led users research and CX initiative at companies like Consel, 𝐘𝐨𝐮'𝐥𝐥, and IBM iX. He worked at the intersection of customer experience, data analytics, decision making, with a strong focus on translating customer signal into actionable insights. His work focusing on helping organizations move beyond reporting metrics to build customer insight capabilities that influence the decision. Michael, great to have you with us today. And thank you for selecting this subject for the webinar. And hope we're going to have interesting conversations for that.
Thank you, Rahul, for inviting me here, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm also looking forward to have an interesting discussion.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the big picture. Most organizations today have a dashboard filled with the metrics like its NPS score, customer feedback, product analytics, engagement data. Yet many leaders still say they lack actionable insights. Why do you think dashboards alone are often not enough for making strategic decisions?
I think it's a mixture of several factors. So it could be like that the way that the customer insights teams operates, his position in the company, or I don't know, the way their role has been managed, or maybe even like the data-driven maturity of the company. But if I have to pick one, I would say that is strongly depend on the original purpose behind the reason why the dashboard was built. Let me give you like a little bit of background about this. I have to talk a little bit about statistics now because many people, many companies still lack this very basic distinction between the descriptive statistics and the diagnostic statistics. In my experience, my impression is that a lot of companies are still working with the descriptive statistics, so explaining what's happening now, or what happened until now, and just very few are actually focusing on the diagnostic aspect of statistics, which try to explain why did that happen. I think that is a critical difference, and it doesn't mean that all companies should already work with the diagnostic level, but I think that the critical point here is that they should at least be aware of the difference. And I've seen that many don't really understand that, so they are totally happy to look in like the dashboard, which has these NPS or the metrics that you would like to list, and but then they don't really understand how they can use those numbers. And they complain sometimes with the customer insights teams. They say okay, but what should I do now? So you got me this NPS. So what's the point? That's the things that, in my opinion, is the most important things. Distinguish the power of the diagnostic of the numbers or of the dashboard that you're building up for your company. And that will be actually the first level, because we know that there is also the predictive and eventually the prescriptive. But I've seen very few companies that are actually moving in this direction already. And let me also say that that also depends on the department, because I've seen companies are working a lot with the predictive and prescriptive statistics, but for example with finance, not with customer data. And I think this is very important. It's a very important distinction. So I think everyone knows the advantage, the power behind the difference between across this kind of statistics, but not every company is aware of that.
Understand. Yeah, insight in the dashboard is not enough. It's more have the practical implementation of that would be more beneficial for the company.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question is like, there is often a big difference between collecting customer data and, generating meaningful insights. From your perspective, what distinguishes organize that successfully convert data into strategic insights from those that simply report metrics?
Um, let's make an assumption here. Let's say that we given for grant that the company are working with its diagnostic insights. Okay, so that would be like the first step. The second thing is that, in my opinion, insights must be part of the product roadmap discussion. And I think that's the
Yeah,
critical point. And what I've seen a lot of time is that the insights are left, or let's say that they are seen as part of the insights team, so they left as a responsibility for the insights team. And I think that's like a big changes whether you start thinking about like those data actually belongs also to me, and I'm actually interested in looking at those data without actually asking for those data every time to the customer insights team. And I think that's, of course, it's like a change in the mindset. But I think that there is like another factor that plays like a critical role here, which is the shared language. Where I see like in my direct experience working for different companies is that uh, in particular, like when you look at the data from the customer insight perspective, is that usually the customer insight team has like a central role and is working for several departments.
correct.
And what I've seen relatively often is that there might be like an incongruence the way the people are treating the data, especially in the customer in the customer domain. So there is like I can give you like a very simple example, because like the classical example, there is like maybe a department which is using a scale from 1 to 5, another one which is using a scale from 1 to 7. Those are the small details, but if you don't use like those shell language, that creates like a great confusion, and that will make like those insights even less usable at the end. So I think like it's a combination of the two things, being involved like in the roadmap discussion. So take those insights
Mhm.
into this kind of roadmap, the product roadmap discussion. Plus, you should also really have like somebody that at least like centrally try to have like that shared language. I'm not talking like just about like data governance, but that's the direction I'm talking about.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you're right. Uh, this question is like bottom up from my heart. Everyone is looking for an answer for this question. Companies today receive customer signal from many sources. Either it's a survey, interviews, product usage data, customer support interaction, community feedback. How should organizations decide which signal truly matter and which one are just noise?
Rahul, I come from like a relatively scientific background, so I spent like many years in academia. So something that I learned from there is that statistics is a friend, and I think the answer here is that you need to leverage statistics in order to understand what is the signal that really matters. And in order to do that, you can like starting with a very simple correlation, so you can just see like how one signal correlates with the KPIs that you really want to affect. And after the correlation, you can actually model your data, so you can have like multivariate statistics which help you to really understand which factors is the most important one. So those type of questions are really what could really be answered kind of easily if somebody might leverage like this kind of statistic approach. Unfortunately, I've seen it like also many times. Those gut feeling decisions, I wouldn't say they're still dominating like business, but they are still present. And sometimes we, as a I would say customer insights team, we have to fight against those gut feeling decision, because it depends where they're coming from, but they're still a little bit skeptical of the power of those statistical models. From my side, what I've seen that really is really important is also to be aware of the fact that you can bring like a very complex statistical model to the stakeholders because they are not interested. They are not interested to understand like the statistics behind that. And if you bring like all those p-values, they are not really interested in that. They just want to get like the answer without getting all those heavy information that comes from the analytics. So that's at least what I've experienced myself working for different companies.
Yeah, that's good. And do you think like that's also the problem which we are facing? Like we got inquiries from the different channels and all those things. Specifically, it's a little out of from my curiosity, right? So it's good to monitor from which channel the customers generate more business or something.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. So the next question is like many organizations invest in CX tools, right? We are not saying like they can invest on Verbix.ai, but yes, many organizations invest in CX tools, survey analytics platform, but still struggle to become truly data driven. From your experience, what difference organizations with high customer insight, maturity from those that are still at an early stage, and how can company evolve their operating model to make insight part of everyday decision making?
Okay, so to answer your first question, I think that goes a little bit back to what I said before. So again, about like how those insights are integrated in the roadmap. But here is, I would say, something different because it's not just like how the insights are integrated like the roadmap, but how the insights are integrated in the decision process. Because that is what make the customer insight a little bit more strategic. And in order to make companies like really based on insight, I would say that it's a very lengthy process. So it's a long-term investment for a company. But in my direct experience, what I've seen that works better is when that kind of transformation is top driven. So that means that issue comes from the executive. It should like start from an executive sponsorship. Why? Because products, teams, marketing, they have like other priorities, and I've seen that like directly with my experience. So when you try to, for example, I can give you like a very concrete example. So I thought like we should start collecting like customer satisfaction directly from the apps, okay? But all the products, all the app servers, we have like several product apps. They thought like that it was just like a nice to have, right? Because they have to implement, they have to change the code, they have to modify, they have other priorities. So they say like, yeah, Michele, that is fine, but I don't know exactly where we can do that. And you can't imagine how much time I've spent like just having like those discussions with the stakeholders, until the point where our CEO say like, I want to see the customer satisfaction from the apps. And guess what? A week later, I have everything installed and everything was running and collecting data. So again, it's really depends on where it's coming from. And in my experience, if that is really like a change which is let's say driven from the top, that would be like much more easier and much more successful.
Got it. So this is a good advice. Like not only the tools can work, but the strategy behind the tools must work.
Absolutely, I think of course the tools
Yeah,
are play like a critical role, but in the way you're making the tools really effective for a company, that requires like a lot of work behind.
that's good. That's good. Okay, next section is like building an insight culture. So sometimes the challenge isn't data, it's organization culture. Insight may exist, but they don't influence decision. What does it take to build a culture where customer insight genuinely influence product and business strategy?
Okay, again, I think it's a long process, so you definitely need like time and investments. Probably that goes again along what I just said. You also need like a charismatic leader, because it's that type of leadership that actually can really bring a change. And I think that type of leadership really works, especially if it's fueled by examples. So if this is not just like, you know, a top-driven decision, but for example, if like your CEO or like the executive bring like a concrete example of showing why it's so important to measure, like, you know, given metrics, how these metrics should be used by the teams. Those are the kind of example that it should be brought like in the discussion, which will actually help in convincing people that that is the right decision. I also believe that not all companies or not all people working for a company are actually well trained to work with data. So we also have to face that. Not everyone is coming from the same background. So a focus or like a specific training is also very well recommended, because we actually working with data, and for us it's given for granted, you know, how it works. But you also have to imagine that not everyone is like, you know, coming from the same background. You have like, you know, they actually never work with data. So in order to have like, you know, this large impact change in the company, you might also think about like, you know, training. And probably the most important one is to translate insights into concrete impact. Because sometimes we are always just talking about insights. We just say like, oh, we know that, you know, those segments really want to have like this feature. Okay, but what does it mean? What does it bring to the company? So if we make this change, what's the advantage for the company? And that is the missing link that sometimes it can really make the difference. Because, you know, you can have like this kind of top-down decision, but if you explain to the people, say like, yes, but if you actually can affect and positively change like this KPI, it means that it's going to have like, you know, a direct effect also on our revenue, for example, or like the volume of sales and so on. And I think that was like, you know, the main reason why that's sometimes works and sometimes doesn't.
Got it. Yep. Yeah. So it's the company has to build a certain culture where customer insight genuinely, you know, influence product and business strategy. Thank you for this answer. The next is more about role of real-time customer signals. Another major shift we are seeing in the rise of real-time customer signal and feedback loops. Instead of uh, quarterly reports, companies are moving towards continuous insight generation. How should organizations balance real-time signal with more traditional CX metrics like NPS or CSAT?
That's a great question. I think that, you know, I don't have to give like, you know, a description of what NPS is or customer satisfaction. Everyone knows it. Let me get a little bit more technical here, because I think I need that in order to answer your question. So the NPS is the classical relational. So it's a long term, and maybe it can help you to understand like the brand experience and so on. The customer experience is transactional. So it means that at best it should like measure like an interaction with a company at a specific moment in time. And the real-time signals already goes in this direction. So it's also real-time are also very, very transaction by definition. And so in order to answer your question is like, there is no something that is good or bad. That's totally depends on what you want to measure, because probably company want to measure everything. So they want to measure something that is actually relational, but they also want to have like, you know, the possibility to measure something that is very transactional. And you know, those real-time signals for me are absolutely fundamental. For example, in the customer experience, the real-time signals are fundamental for the closing the loops, right? So in the ideal world, you should be able to see like every minute that, if something goes wrong with an interaction with a client. And if you just wait like a few days, that is already too late. That's why we absolutely need like, those real-time signal for delivery, like, not just good insights, but also to do like, a great customer experience. But again, I think, at least in my experience, it really depends on what you want to measure and what are the priorities of for your company.
Perfect. So NPS and CSAT is like the important metrics, and having those into the real time would impact a lot to the organization. Next is more about like connecting research with the product decisions. So customer research team often generate valuable insight, but sometimes those insights don't translate directly into product decisions. How can organization better integrate research insight into product developments and decision process?
This is a great question. And actually, it has been like a problem for a long time, at least for me, because as I say like before, every department, every team has different priorities, and it's extremely difficult to find like a balance between what a team thinks is important in comparison to the roadmap that another team has built up. So in my experience, what really worked very well is to integrate the insights directly in the priorities of the teams. And how we do that, by simply working with the JIRA tickets, or like in general with tickets. So a lot of companies now are like, with this classical agile approach, and they have like tickets, and they said, okay, we can, have like weekly where we decide like to prioritize which ticket is more important. And that's, for me, was like, the point where the insight could really get into the product roadmap, because you should like, be involved in this discussion. So you take like the insights and you translate those insights in tickets, so that the tickets becomes like to do, and you can see like, how important it is also for the team. And most important, you are kind of assured that actually the insights became something actionable. So it doesn't stay like on the table, and it doesn't remain like just a suggestion. It became something that actually could affect like the way you're developing a products. And for me, that was really a game changer. And I would strongly recommend to do that. Of course, that depends on the way the companies are working, but for me, it was like a really game changer.
Perfect. So audience, if you have any question, feel free to raise your hand. So we'll keep you on mute, and you can directly speak to Michele or if you have any questions. So Michele, we have a next question. It's more about measuring the impact of customer insights. So leadership team often wants to see a measurable outcome. How can organization demonstrate the business impact of investing in customer insight or user research?
That is also very good question, and also very common, Rahul. So especially when you're working in the consultant field, you have to convince people that you need to work with those data. You need to work. You need to collect data. You need to do some research. And the very first question is like, okay, but what is coming back to me? And for many years, we've been talking about the return of investment. And actually, I came across just a few weeks before, I don't know if you have heard about that, but there is this nice word, which is ROX. So it's return of customer experience. I don't know whether you ever heard about that, but I think like, it gives like, very interesting and a very interesting idea. And of course, there is like a very interesting chapter on the very, very famous Outside In book by Manning and Bodine, which just dedicated on this. But basically, how can we do that? And here my suggestion would be like, to design the right KPIs and connect them with the right business metrics. So that would be like, the most easiest ones. So as I say, like before, so you have like just like an NPS, and you can measure, and or you can see that actually there is like a 5% of improvement of this NPS.
Correct.
Then modeling, you can actually quantify how much it means for the company, those 5% that you gain. Maybe you can really translate like in revenue, maybe you can translate like in the value on sales or on anything, but then you have like something that is measurable, and that is the critical things. And that would be like, that will give you like, more like the possibility to take like, more informed decision about this.
Good. So next is more about like, we have a very short time, so I quickly wrap up 2 more questions.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
It's advice for CX and research leaders. So for CX leaders or research teams who wants to move beyond dashboard and reporting, what are the first few steps they should take to evolve into strategic insight function?
I think the very first step is to define the business impact, because that is something that everyone is going to understand. Sometimes, and I see like more often than I would, is that people don't always get like how important an insight is. Of course, it depends also on the way you presenting, the way you like, on the storyline that you're using and everything. I think it's really like, the kind of mindset. But if you're talking about like, the classical business measures, that is something that everyone will understand. And that would be like, making your life and the colleague life much easier. And that would be like, my first suggestion.
Very good, very good. Thank you for your advice on that.
Sure.
The last question of this session, that is more about the future of customer insights. So looking ahead, we see a rapid advance in AI, right? Because everyone is speaking like out of 3 words, if you consider the tech industry, 1 word is AI. So AI, automated analytics, and voice of customer technologies. How do you see the role of AI shaping customer insights and decision making over the next few years?
Great question. So I would say that there is something that is inevitable and something that we can happen. So that means that the fact that we're going to work with AI, that's something inevitable. So we are like, I would say we are like in a point of no return. But the way we're going to use or leverage the AI, that is still open in my opinion. I see a great future of working together between like, between customer insights, customer experience, AI, all together. But the way we actually really leveraging them, it's for me is still a little bit undefined. So let me be very, very, very clear about this. There are aspects of our job that actually have been hugely impacted by AI. So let's talk very, very briefly about like, customer service. So that's your field. Everyone in now is really working in this direction. But from my point of view, like more in customer insights, and with the AI supports, we can analyze thousands of calls, thousands of complaints, thousands of feedback in a couple of hours, which actually took us, I don't know, a month before. And that's like, that's everyone have seen it in action and everyone agree upon. And I think that's the way that we start using the AI, but that is only the beginning. Exactly where the AI support will bring us, or will bring like the customer experience or the customer insight, for me is still a little bit undefined. I still believe that there is one aspect of this, I would call it collaboration between human and AI, which I still see like 100% on on the human part, which is the decision making. So for me, it's like the AI is like a huge support. I'm actually using it every day, and I'm really looking forward to see what it will bring like in the next few weeks or the next few months. But at the end, I am the person that actually is taking the final decision about like, something. And I think that should be like the limit between the two words. I know that is not going to happen, because I'm pretty sure that you might have heard like about the virtual AI driven hospital, which from one side like it's great. From that side, I'm a bit like scared, a bit skeptical. But it's really we are like in this incredible interesting translation. Transaction, not to say this is the transaction, and I think the possibilities are really limitless. And so for me, I can only see that we can work with AI more every day, but exactly how to evolve, that really depends on how the business also evolve. So because it's always how the company responds to the market and to the needs of the customer and so on. So there are so many variables that at the moment are playing this game, which makes like at least for me, it makes like the scenario very, very extremely complicated. At least to make a prediction.
True. Yeah, we have to build a friendship with AI, then become their enemies. So AI is now in every aspect of the human life nowadays. So we cannot ignore the rapid development happening in AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
Perfect. So Michele, thanks for sharing your insight. Now we will move into the question and answer session. If anyone has any question, feel free to raise your hand so I will unmute you. I have a couple of questions from the audience. I have one question from Victor. So his question is like, what are the most common mistakes organizations make when interpreting customer data, and how they avoid them?
So the most common mistake in interpreting the data, customer data.
Yes.
I would say that that's depend on the type of customer data. So I would assume that we're talking about like, for example, feedback. And one of the biggest problems that I've seen is the misunderstanding of generalization. So people, I'm sorry, I have to go back again about a little bit of statistics, but sometimes people forget like about like those very basic statistics information. So you need to have like a list number of people that actually give you like a feedback on a very specific thing in order to think that is really representing like the whole population. So that is a classical inferential statistics. And other problem that I've seen personally in interpreting the data, yeah, they are mostly with qualitative data, because quantitative data usually are like kind of much easier because like more confined in those mathematical field. But the qualitative data are open to subjective interpretation sometimes. And I can give you like a concrete example also here. We use like an AI tools to analyze our open feedback. And the problem is that the AI alone cannot really categorize the feedback based on the way we build like a specific product. So it requires some training, requires like some the categories, the labels, the tag, everything. And if you're making this process too quickly, or you're not really thinking enough how you should be like this kind of training phase, then you're gonna face like a huge problem, because you don't know exactly what's happening after. So when you send the data to the AI, you just receive like the data coded or like categorized. So that could be like another type of error that people might face when working with qualitative data. Yeah, so those are like probably the two more, I would say, wouldn't say dangerous, but the two most problematic issue that people might facing with those kind of type of data.
Got it. There is one more question from Chris. Chris, thank you for this question. His question is like, what tools and method do you recommend for collecting and analyzing customer signal effectively?
I didn't hear you exactly. What was? Can you ask again? Can you say
Okay,
that again?
sorry. What tools and methods do you recommend for collecting and analyzing customer signal effectively? I mean, he is asking like, what kind of tools you recommend?
That's really depends on which type of data you need. So if you need like a feedback, then it's like classical questionnaire. If you need to have like those transactional feedback, then you need like an in-app feedback system. I don't know whether I want to, I don't want to name a few, but there are like on the market there are like kind of a few. And Rahul products, it's great, for example, for the customer service. So it really depends. It really depends on the type of data that you need for your company. There are like really a lot of different solutions. I don't have like a specific recommendation because I'm not like a huge fan of a specific product. I'm more interested in the results that you can get like from a tools. So if a tools that I'm using is not delivering or it's not meeting like my expectation, then I'm happy to switch it. So I'm not the kind of person that actually is always committed to work with just one tool. But again, it really depends on the type of feedback. It depends on which touch point are you actually collecting the data. Because sometimes the touch point is not digital, so you need to have like somebody that actually is physically in the shop to ask questions. So that's a little bit difficult to answer. So there is no like just one answer. It really depends on what you want to collect, what you want to achieve, and so on.
Okay, perfect. So next question is more about like, how do you balance qualitative data like analytics with qualitative insight? Sorry, quantitative data like analytics with qualitative insights from interviews and research.
That's a great question. So I usually use quantitative data to understand what the problem is. One aspect that for me very important of quantitative data is sometimes they are in real time. So you might get like a very quick signals from what's happening with the interaction with the customer. And then after you analyze those data, you identify where the biggest problem is, or the main issue, or the big hurdles are. And then is the time where you have to bring like the qualitative data into the equation. Because again, it's very classical approach, but I think that is pretty right. So the quantitative data are usually used to understand where the problem is, but really to answer why that's happened, you need like the qualitative data. I also have like tried to bring those two words together, and for me it was like working very well by analyzing the data like in a classical BI tools like Power BI, for example, because there is like the possibility that you have like the qualitative data. So you have like your dashboard, and together with the dashboard with quantitative data, you also have the qualitative data. For example, you can have like your NPS, and when you click on the detractors, you can see, because you can filter out only the detractors feedback, so you can see quickly what those people that actually was like give like a negative or like a low rates for the NPS actually said, and then you can interpret is that okay, why we got like such low NPS, and then you have the qualitative data there, so that might like help you to better understand what are the cause routes to really find like where the problem is.
Perfect. So we will going to take the last question. If anybody has or if anybody wants to speak, I will unmute. So if you have any question in your mind, you can just raise your hand so you can directly talk to us for your question and to Michele. So you will get an opportunity to talk to Michele. So if anybody has any other question, feel free to raise your hand. So I I can unmute you. If not, you can feel free to email us any question and we will going to transfer that to Michele.
Sure, of
But
course.
this webinar is more about like just facilitate you guys to understand like the specific subject we choose on how it's important for the various insight the company received and how we can analyze that. So, Michele, thank you for the insightful discussion. And thank you everyone who's joined us today. If there is one key takeaway from this conversation is customer signal become powerful only when they influence real decisions. So moving beyond dashboard means creating a system, process, and culture where customer insights actively shape strategy, product development, and experience decision. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar along with additional resource after this session. If you have any additional question or something, feel free to send an email to us on webinar@verbix.ai. We will come up with the next interesting session for with a different another exciting speaker on our next webinar. Thank you everyone and have a wonderful day. Thank you,
Thank you very
Michele.
much. Thank you very much, Rahul, for having me. And also thank you for attending this webinar and for your question. I'll see you next
Thank you
time
so much.
then.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.